Russia and Ukraine are not ready for a peace deal. We know that Marco Rubio has said that it's only through a negotiation or diplomacy that this war is going to end. So if they're not ready, and it only ends with diplomacy, I think we go back to what Pete Hegseth said at the Ramstein meeting this week, where the only way you get to diplomacy is by being strong, peace through strength. So you have to give Ukraine the weapons to hurt Russia in the way that it has, which is attacking its military, its oil and gas production facilities. We have seen an enormous decrease in the ability for Russia to keep exporting. And then the other part of it, which they still haven't used, is the sanctions. Now, the only news about sanctions is that this week, the head of the Senate once again was asked about it and said that it's available to be discussed. So we know that the sanctions, we've been talking about this all year, right? Every time Senator Graham shows up in Ukraine or Senator Blumenthal, everybody thinks that the sanctions are going to happen. But the White House has blocked that. The White House has blocked that. And I think it needs to be a part of the conversation now. It's interesting that we heard more about tomahawks in the last 6 weeks from the president than we did about sanctions. But you can neither of them are a solution by itself. We can't just bomb Russian oil facilities without sanctioning the tankers and the Shadow Fleet or the people who buy it from the Shadow Fleet. And you also can't just sanction the Shadow Fleet without attacking the facilities. Those two things need to work together to put the pressure on Russia, and that's the only way we get to some kind of ceasefire. And I'll once again bring up we're after first time with you today, but I've been talking on American television and reminding them that Ukraine promised over 225 days ago for a full ceasefire. Ukraine already has agreed to that. All that we're trying to get to this point is putting this pressure on so that Russia stops attacking civilian hospitals, civilian locations, energy facilities in Ukraine that help civilians. They're not targeting military facilities. They're targeting civilian rail lines or civilian energy producing facilities.
Yeah, but Putin don't want to peace. Putin won't teach Trump. At the Alaska summit, Putin rejected Trump's peace proposal for Ukraine and launched into a long lecture about the origins of Rus, Rurik, and Yaroslav Davis, according to the Financial Times. That's a classic Putin. So do Trump and Putin actually get along?
They did for a very long time. I think that this year has been very stressful for that relationship because Trump thought that that the kindness is that, I don't know if you want to use that word, or manipulation, the way that Putin had treated Trump for these many years up until this year. Trump thought that meant that they were close enough as friends that he could say, listen, let's do something for a peace deal. And he has been rejected numerous times. Now, there's also this proposal for them to meet possibly in Budapest. Let's ignore whether Budapest will be the location, because we know that it would have to fly over some kind of Ukrainian territory or NATO territory, and we know that Putin isn't comfortable with that. But I still believe, we had this conversation before Alaska, and I was not convinced that he would fly to Alaska because he did not fly to Istanbul. So if there is a proposed meeting, I still don't believe that Putin is going to fly somewhere to meet with him. And that's going to be the problem for this kind of peace deal. Putin is going to have to come to Trump and ask him for some help. And that's why the manipulation, the flattery, the telling him this is the only way it ends. We know that there are people within the administration that really believe what Putin says, or they're offered those presents of the paintings and stuff. But in the end, I think we've seen a dramatic shift in this administration to realize that they can achieve peace. Also, let's not forget the influence of the Middle East process. The Middle East process is nowhere near done. That has been like George W. Bush had his big mission accomplished banner, and we still had to finish the war for 10 years after. Similarly, Trump went to Egypt, signed the big accord, mission accomplished, but we still have to figure out how to have peace. However, what that process did, it motivated the Europeans to come to Egypt to show that they can work together for peace. And frankly, they are more invested in peace in Ukraine than they are in the Middle East. So hopefully that process of working with Trump, flattering him, telling him this is the right thing to do, hopefully they can move that to Ukraine, where they're more invested. Meloni is more invested in peace in Ukraine than she is in Middle East. Same thing with Starmer and Macron and everybody.
But Andriy, at the same times, Trump sent a different signal that JD Vance, I am capable of ending the war in Ukraine. I think will succeed, said Trump.
We will see. I mean, he said that during the Egypt in Egypt when he was talking about that he was done, and then he had a private dinner that was recorded his speech on Wednesday evening here in the United States, where he said the same thing he did in Egypt, which is we've solved the process in the Middle East. He said something like that, but then he said, and now we can do it in Ukraine. I thought we could do it sooner, but now we're moving to Ukraine. And he asked Witkoff to once again get involved in that. Again, these are very similar to the pronouncements of having a mission accomplished in the Middle East, where he talks a lot, but to actually get to the solution, you need to have some kind of action, and the action is tomahawks to Ukraine. The action is sanctions on Russia, to make sure that you do what Trump has. His policy has been not just in the first Trump administration, but also as his business. He wrote a book about how to make a deal, and that is put maximum pressure on the other side all the way until you're even in the room. And the one thing that Trump hasn't done, he hasn't put maximum pressure on Putin. And the opposite way, it's Putin who's been doing maximum pressure. As we saw in Alaska, while they were talking, Russia was launching its bombers against Ukraine. While President Trump then 2 days later had European leaders at the White House, President Putin was sending more bombers and rockets against Ukraine. That's maximum pressure. That's not what Trump is doing, and Trump needs to reverse that. He needs to have Ukrainian tomahawks being sent into Russia and then call Putin and say, now do you want to have a peace deal?
Yeah, nice book. But one more thing. Germany says the ECC rules still apply to Hungary, and Putin plans to go there. So will they arrest him?
I don't know if it's arresting. I think it's just in general about even crossing airspace. We saw this happen with Belarus was able to force down a plane with a political dissident when a plane flew over Belarus territory, and they forced down the plane. This plane is going to have to fly over a NATO country that is not, either they fly over Ukraine, which Putin would never do, he's too scared. Either they fly over Ukraine into Hungary directly somehow, or they fly over Slovakia, Poland, and some other European country. So they are going to have to fly into the airspace of a country that considers him a war criminal. How does he do that? I do not know.